And we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It's another episode of your favorite podcast, Keeping It Rio. And today I am super pumped up, like I'm not every other episode, but maybe a little more so than usual because it's a Saturday morning. My guest is coming to me live from the capital city, my hometown of Columbus, Ohio. And while there is no Buckeye game today, Mike McGovern, I do want you to know you are amongst true Buckeyes over
I
here.
love that.
So, all the way from San Antonio, I'd like to welcome my friend, the CEO of Columbus Roofing, the host of the Reckless CEO podcast, and many, many other things that we're going to learn here in the next hour or so. Michael McGovern, welcome to Keeping It Rio, my friend. How you doing?
Oh man, I'm excited to be here, Chuck. I appreciate you having me on. And like you said, you said thanks for coming in on a Saturday, and for me, this doesn't get any better than this, man. I mean, I think that's why I love this industry and love business and the podcasts and everything like that, because it's just the opportunity to connect with great people, and there needs to be more of this. You know what I mean? There's a lot of egos that float around in businesses, and guys don't want to share and don't have that abundant mindset. And so I'm just grateful to be here, my man. Thank you.
Yeah, I am too. And I love that mindset because you're new into this industry, relatively speaking. A lot of the people I talk to are kind of the same way, and we all get into it on accident, really. And the truth is, I grew up in Hilliard, Ohio. I lived there my entire life. And my entrance into the roofing industry was I worked at a drywall company and had a bad day, man. And I'm driving home and I was all pissed off. And there's a company on the side there, P&W Roofing Supply. It's over on Roberts Road in Hilliard, Ohio.
Yep.
And they were hiring for drivers. So I literally just pulled in that day. And 25 years later, here I am talking to you on this podcast. And it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And I didn't know it. And at many points during that 25 years, I've kind of denied that. But there's nothing like this roofing industry. Once you get in, you never really want to get out. So let's start with that. How in the world did you get into the roofing industry? Take us back a little bit, because I know you didn't grow up as a little boy dreaming to be a roofing company guy. None of us did. Tell me a little bit about your history and what got you to this point in life, and we'll just run from there.
I'm originally from Wheeling, West Virginia. Born and raised in Wheeling. Grew up playing hockey, so playing competitive sports, things like that. That was kind of seems you find a lot of our guys like us that did something that they pushed themselves, right? And so got in and started playing hockey. After high school, I ended up moving up to Boston, Massachusetts, and played junior hockey up there for about 4 years. I was committed to go to Babson University, and in my last, literally, man, my last year, about 3 to 4 weeks into training camp, I got hit, severe high ankle sprain. Tried to work through it, kept showing up. I was eating Percocet and Vicodins and taping my ankle and crutching into the rink and just trying to, make it work. And eventually it got to the point where I was just deteriorating my ankle, and I had stepped back for about 2 or 3 months to kind of let it recover. And when you're playing at such a high level like that, that was why I didn't want to go out, right? I knew what was going to happen. There were so many good guys. That team ended up being a national championship team that year. And man, I ended up walking away from hockey at that point and just kind of moved back home and got into the coal mine. So I was in the coal mine for about 2.5 years and just started kind of, I had no education, really no plan, right? I was the kind of guy that I've always been a big dreamer. So for me, I was going to the NHL, right? That's kind of what I always thought, and had this vision of what a big life would be for me. And, unfortunately, fortunately, it didn't happen. And that kind of started my, I would say, somewhat of a spiral, right? It's like your identity's in this hockey thing and all of this stuff and what I thought life was going to look like. And next thing you know, it just kind of takes a detour. And I ended up moving back home, going to the coal mines. And man, at this point, I'm 20 years old and I am working a mad schedule, right? So midnights, afternoon, days, 12 to 16 hour shifts, and just for about $15 an hour as a subcontractor, man. And it was probably the most humbling experience that I'd really ever gone through, right? Because it was, I showed up to this mine where no one knows who I am. No one cares who I am, right? And in my mind, I thought I was a celebrity and, all of these things. And so it definitely set me back and kind of, reframed the way that I, thought about things. And really, man, I went for about 6 years. I went from there. I got into a gas plant where I was an operator technician there for about 5 years. And, and I'd kind of given up. Right. Like I didn't think it was going to really ever go anywhere for me at this point. I wouldn't listen to podcasts. I wouldn't read books, because it was like the more I did that, the more it reminded me where I wasn't, right? Like I wasn't exposed to anything. I didn't have anyone around me that were high achievers anymore. And it was just like, this is it, man. This is it for you. And so kind of through that, that journey and whatnot, it was it was December of 2017. And it was when Ohio State played Penn State. And that was that crazy game, right? It was like they didn't come back and won it. It'd be like
it was the 16 straight completions. I gotcha.
Yep. And we ended, a couple of my buddies was like, hey man, like let's go up to Columbus for this weekend and go up to. So we went up to the game. And dude, I'll never forget it. I talk about it all the time, but it's like those God things, right? The things that you can't really explain. It's like an overwhelming sense of something, right? And I remember walking out of the bars, everyone's, intoxicated, and I'm looking up at that Nationwide building, and it's just bright, shining, and I'm just like, man, like I don't know what it is. Like something is like just calling me. Here's the craziest thing, and like I barely even sleep that night. And I get up the next day, and we're driving home, and I'm going through Indeed, just looking at jobs, trying to find something, right? And I got no skills at this point, right? I didn't have sales skills. It was hockey and then like blue collar work.
Yep.
And man, I ended up finding a job for AEP Energy, doing door-to-door sales, like selling the electrician portion of your bill, right? And it had in the description, it was like, oh, training and all this stuff. Like they made it sound really great. I get up there, I drive back up on a weekend to interview with them, and they're like, listen, man, like we hire anybody for this job. Like basically, if you're 18 years old and you're willing to go knock doors, like you got the job. They're like, I know you're giving up kind of a lot. Like, I don't know if it's really worth it to make that move to come here, but if you want the job, you got the job. You just have to have an address up here. Well, I didn't have friends, family, anything up there at the time, but I did have a friend who was an acquaintance of a friend that basically was like, hey man, listen, if you need an address, if you need to sleep on a couch, you can do that. And in that moment, man, I went back home. I loaded my truck up. I cashed out my 401k, and I moved to Columbus. And it was just like, I'll never forget, man. It was like the first week of going through this. I'm going through this training, and here I was working with guys that were 30, 40, 50 years old, right? Now all of a sudden I'm working with like 17, 18-year-olds. Like everything had shifted. I went from making $100,000 a year to making, $10 to $20 a sale. And I'll never forget, it was in December, right? So it's like snowing and sleet. And I'm walking back to my car, and like I just start crying. And I'm just like, what did I do, man? Like what did you think was going to happen, with this move? Did you think it was just going to be blessed and everything was going to, come easy? And I remember sitting in my car, and at this point I had to sell my truck because I couldn't afford the truck anymore. So I got this little Toyota Corolla, and I'm just sitting in there like, I got to get back. I got to get back home. This isn't going to go anywhere for me. I got to quit. Fortunately, I didn't, right? I kind of worked my way through it. And then just over time, man, I went from there. I ended up getting into cemetery sales. Right. So next thing you know, I had a friend, another friend. It was like, oh man, I'm doing this in Pittsburgh. Like, look and see if they're hiring. Turns out he got a referral fee if I stayed for 3 months. So he kind of coerced me into it.
Nice.
But went there and really started learning sales. Right. Like I got, I'll never forget when I got hired there. The guy's like, dude, you're a good looking kid. I think you would do well here, but like you're loud, you're kind of aggressive. And like that's not gonna settle well with people on the worst day of their life. So you need to figure that out. And I just spent time with people and just really learning, empathy and how to, talk to people and run conversation and just lead people, you know what I mean, to help them. And I think that was probably one of the biggest kind of like defining moments of my life is getting into that industry. I ended up doing really well with it. I ended up having 4 branches from Columbus to Dayton that I was running, but still unfulfilled, right? It's like we all have that kind of like burning desire for more. And I had a friend that had introduced me to real estate investing. And he's like, hey man, there's this thing called wholesaling where you can make money with no money, that whole spiel. And so I kind of started like learning it. This kid's teaching me, and then he moves away. And I'm like, man, like that, I felt like I finally had something again, and then it's gone, right? And I'm like, but I'm going to keep kind of going down this road. And at this moment, I knew nothing about marketing, like, nothing about ads, nothing about that. So when I started YouTube and wholesaling, right, all this stuff's popping up on it. And, I put my number in, and next thing you know, I get a call within, 3 minutes of like, you were picked. You got picked to come on this trip and learn this. Like they make you feel like
you're the luckiest man on earth. Absolutely.
Yeah, man, right. And so I'm like, okay, sweet. And they're like, it's just $10,000. And I'm like, oh man, like I got about $5,000 to $6,000 in cash, and I got about another $5,000 to $6,000 in credit cards. Right. But it's like one of those moments where what are you going to do?
Yep.
And it was I just leaped, right? I was like, all right, screw it. I flew out to Arizona, 7 days, like learning real estate investing and kind of doing that. I come back, I'm working at the cemetery, and I tell myself, I'm like, I'm going to leave by May. right? I'm going to get in. By May of my birthday, I'm going to step out into this real estate thing full time. And, fortunately, I just had some good luck, right? I was hustling, things happened. I ended up finding a house that was, down in the bottoms, right? Franklinton. And I found a house down there, and I put it under contract as my first wholesale. I knew that it was a good deal, but I couldn't get anyone to buy it, right? No one knew who I was. I wasn't in the community. And so it was like, and not even from being here, because I'd only been here about 2.5, 3 years now too. So I'm still relatively new to the area. But I knew I had something, right? So I just started calling all my friends and family, trying to get 20 grand from this guy, 20 grand from that guy, just hustling to try to be like, I know this house will work. Just give me an opportunity. And I ended up raising about $150,000 and bought the house, quit my job, and jumped all into real estate investing. And it was basically learning through the construction and just kind of figuring out as I went. Again, and I kind of started to take some, to get some momentum, and it was growing, and still though wasn't really like fulfilled, right? At this point, I'd hired a business mentor, start really working with him. And, and he's like, man, I'm telling you, you got to get into this roofing thing. And I'm like, dude, I ain't a roofer, bro. I've never laid a shingle. I know nothing. But like, to me, roofing was dirty, right? I'm like,
I just left the coal mine, dude. What are you trying to do?
100%. Right? I'm like, I ain't going to get back to that. And he's like, no, man, I'm telling you, like, there's this whole insurance piece to it. And, with how you are with the leadership and sales. And he's like, dude, I'm telling you, like, it will be your wheelhouse. So I took his advice. Right? I started, again, YouTubing it, learning some stuff about the insurance stuff, and called a couple of my friends that had, houses up here. And I was just like, hey, man, like, there's this insurance stuff. I think I might be able to get you a new roof. Like, would you be interested in that? I'm like, yeah, man, go ahead. If you can get it, go ahead. Like, I'm not going to pay you. So, but if you can get it, right? And end up getting 2 or 3 roofs. And this was in December of 2021. And so started the company in 21 in December. And I got my first roof by like January from a friend of mine. And the adjuster didn't even come out and look at it. Like, I just sent them the picture. They're like, approved. And I'm like, oh shit, like, is this real?
That was in the good times. That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that era.
Yeah. And things. So that was kind of that momentum, man, right? Like, that happened. And then it was, then I got connected with an adjuster who worked for an insurance company out of like Wayne County up by like Worcester, Ohio, and kind of met him through somebody. And now he's kind of writing supplements for me and making estimates, because I didn't even know how to do estimates or order or nothing. I was just selling, And, and one thing led to the next. I was like, I sold a couple houses, got somebody, or sold a couple roofs, hired somebody, sold a couple more, hired somebody. And it was just all of a sudden, that momentum kind of starts taking off. And then there was a storm that happened in Worcester, Ohio, in his county, and his insurance company had 80% of the houses there. And he literally was like, dude, I can't handle this. We're not built for this. Like, can you send your sales guys to Worcester and like literally just have them run inspections, get pictures, and like, I'll tell every person that doesn't have a contractor that you're our preferred contractor, right? And again, it's like another one of that quantum leap God things that you can't explain. Right place, right time. Everything just kind of came together. We went from doing about 8, like when I went to Lee's event last year in May, we had done a collective of about 85,000 from start to finish, from the beginning of the company. Going back this year, last year we hit about 3.3 million, and we're at 4 million this year, right? So from May of last year to this year, we've done about 7 million collective in total since I went to Lee's event and came back this year. So, I mean, man, I give all of it to God and everything too, because it's just, there's so many things that I couldn't, there's no way I could do these things on my own, right? And the influence I've been able to create in Columbus, and just the accelerated growth of opportunity, man. It's just, it's crazy. When I tell the story, it's like, it's hard to believe it's all happened as fast as it has.
It's absolutely incredible, right? And I can completely understand it, because my story is similar. It's like, you're willing to bet on yourself. You understand that you haven't quite got to where you want to get. You're not fulfilling your true destiny and your mission in life. And the best thing about it is, a lot of these people, you tell them, dude, roofing, it's like, there's a lot of money that can be made. You can help a lot of people. Nah, dude, it's roofing. It's dirt bags. It's scum. It's crap. But you start to realize, okay, yeah, there's definitely that element in our industry, and there always will be. That's just the nature of the beast. You don't have to have a college education. You don't have to be, anything really special. You just have to have the willingness to go out and bet on yourself and do it. And there's something really beautiful to that, but actually betting on yourself and then taking the steps to make it happen. You came from a coal mine, dude, and you now got a roofing company that's doing $7 million in a year.
Yeah, man.
And I want everybody to just, give this guy a round of applause for that, because it's amazing, right?
Yeah, man. And it's,
And
a big piece of it, man. Like you said, it's that, we look at what Lee always says it, right? He says that risk is the down payment for success, right? That's one of his big quotes. And I always, kind of reframe to that too. There's a couple quotes that I've heard, right? That's a big one to me. And then all of your greatest resources are in your relationships. A pastor friend of mine, I did a little event one time. He came and spoke to me and he said that. He's like, man, like your greatest resources are in your relationships, man. And, I think so often, when we're growing businesses, trying to get things going, we're trying to wear so many hats, right? Like I look at what I think has helped me to be successful is I had a few things in business with the real estate and things like that. So I wasn't just coming in like, brand new to business, but I was able to come in and really recognize like, what was I good at? Right. I was good at sales. I was good at like leadership, like the culture, right? The leading by example. I wasn't good at back end. I wasn't good at processes. Right. So to me, it was really hyper focusing on like the things that I know that make me great and then like delegating everything outside of that. And that's why I think the roofing took off as quick as it did, because I didn't know nothing about it. So I had to delegate. I had to find people that knew better than I did.
yeah, and I mean it's so crucial. I the thing that you said about the adjuster that sticks in my head, because it's like, man, if you're just cool to these adjusters, they're gonna hook you up, because most roofers are very confrontational. They go in with a huge ego. I'm sure, okay, and I mean this is a complete compliment to you. I'm sure that when an adjuster pulls up and sees you get out of the truck, they're like, oh, this dude, he's pretty flashy, he's a young guy, he's got his swag going on over here. But once you develop that relationship, it's like, shit, this guy's awesome. I'm going to help him out because he's not out here trying to be like these other guys, and he's not doing what he's supposed to. He's letting this develop, and it's going to grow into something magical. And
and that's what I preach to my guys, man. Right? Like I tell all of them, and I think that's where we separate ourselves a lot, right? Because we don't really have that kind of roofer vibe, right? And I am like I try to always be that example, right? I'm like, I have our guys have a cooler with water and Red Bulls in them to make sure when they go to an adjuster meeting, they're giving the adjuster something to drink. They're talking to him. They're building those relationships. And because so often, that, like I said, there's a lot of ego. There's a lot of, the way that people are. And so for me, I just really push on our guys, like, dude, be good people, man. Be good people, and things will always come your way. I mean, from being a business owner yourself, right? There's been a lot of months where, payroll's coming. Right. And you're like, man, like, I don't know what's going to happen. Then all of a sudden, boom, 10 grand hits the bank account, 15 grand hits the bank account. And all of a sudden now you're good again. Right. And it's like, I think so often as business owners, we lose the focus of the big picture. So when things get scary, all of a sudden now we try to take control again. And we just sabotage ourselves. Right. Versus like being, really letting, having faith and saying, man, listen, I know what I'm doing. I'm working my mission. I'm taking care of people. I'm doing everything I can to be the best version of myself. And I've just always stayed true to that. And it's always worked out.
There it is. It's that simple, folks. Like if you believe and you like they say, if you believe, you can achieve. And it's so true. Let's talk for a little bit about your relationship that you have with Lee. You got to speak on stage this year at the Blue Collar American Dream Conference. I remember the story from before we ever met, about this guy that came in. He had done, basically you had a good month of business, in revenue that you generated. You find the Blue Collar American Dream Conference, you come here, and now all of a sudden you've got this affiliation with the guy who, is, dare I say, the master of what he does in the industry, the guy who helps a lot of people to achieve things that they don't even believe that could be possible. But one thing that I definitely was really impressed by is that Lee's not a dude that typically would say, you've got 85K in revenue, bud, join my team. Let me help you go. So how did that meeting go when you guys first met? What about that do you think impressed him to the point where he said, you know what, I'm going to go all in with this guy, even though he's just at the very initial stages. I see something that could be great. And, how did that all play out for you?
Yeah. And yeah, again, a funny thing is, when I was getting into roofing, I had reached out to really anyone that I could, because I had done the real estate stuff. And, I knew that mentorship was like the accelerant to get to where you want. Like, I don't need to learn the lessons on my own, let me go find somebody I can learn it from, right? And so a friend of mine had connected me with Tony Tavares, who owns Linear Roofing.
Yep.
And my buddy's a bodybuilder as well. And he's like, talk to Tony. So I called Tony. I'm like, hey, man, like, you don't know me, but I'm sure you tell people all the time, we're going to tell you they're going to do this and do that. I said, but I'm looking to start a roofing company. Like, what's the one piece of advice that you could give me? And he says, go to the Win the Storm event. It would have been in February of last year. And so I go to the event, and Lee has a little presentation there. He speaks, and he's got his podcast studio set up. And so, he comes out and he's talking. And again, I just like felt like connected. You know what I mean? The things he was saying and the way he was, I'm like, man, like this guy seems like a pretty cool dude, right? And so I knew nobody. I went to the event by myself. And the last day there, I went down to where his studio was, the podcast spot was, and just started talking to him and just like asking questions. And that's been one thing for me that I can always accredit a lot of my success to is like I'm a squeaky wheel, right? When I want to know something, when I need to learn something, I will do everything I can to get the answer. I don't care who it's from, and I will just continue to be there until they're like, all right, the consistency of this guy alone makes me want to just give him the answer. Right. And so I ended up talking to Lee down there, and, I saw that he had the Blue Collar American Dream thing last year, right? It was Ed Milet, which I've always known to see Ed Milet speak. I think Dustin Poirier was there. He had like Jocko there. It's like all these big names. Like, dude, who's this Lee guy, bro? He's like, these guys are rock stars that he's bringing in, right? And that's why I even said it this year, right? I'm like, I haven't seen very many people that can pull this many great speakers together the way that Lee can, right? And so I end up, going to the event. And, I just kind of kept trying to like get myself around Lee, right? It was like I bumping shoulders, always trying to, if he was out in the crowd, I'd make, meander my way to him, mingle a little bit, just make sure he kept seeing me. And, he had followed me on social media at this point, and I didn't actually jump into the course yet. And I was just running through the Sky Diamonds training, using that for my people. And, he starts seeing all of this momentum that we're picking up, right? And these messages like, hey man, like what's kind of going on there? Cause he knew the Lifetime guys, which were in Columbus, right? And then he's kind of seeing what I'm doing, and he's like, man, you're doing a really good job, and just kind of kept following up me. Eventually, him and I got on a phone call, and, just kind of telling him what I want to do, what my goals are. And, and at first it was just kind of a surface level relationship, right? I've got my business mentor specializes in like M&A, so all mergers and acquisitions. And so when I was really getting into the roofing side, that was, I had him kind of as a buffer to say, we're building this thing to sell it, Michael. Like, that's your goal. You need to think 3 to 5 years and exit this thing. And so, when I first kind of started mingling with Lee, I had mentioned some things like that. So I think it kind of like sparked his interest. It's like, wait, this guy is different, right? He's out here playing business. These guys are out here playing roofing, 2 different games. And so started having that conversation with him more and more. And eventually like, dude, like fly down, jump on the podcast. Let's like connect. Went down, like met the team and met all those guys. And it was kind of just, really just started to take off. And I think because of him and I just being, like you said, good old boys, man. He's a good dude. He's got a good heart on him, man. And, and I think good people find good people. And, and again, it's the consistency, right? It's like, there's a lot of people that come and go, right? And he's seen me consistently show up, right? Been watching me for 3 years now. And it's like, still posting every day, still doing the same shit I was doing 3 years ago. Still, and like when you find those people that are consistent, you start to realize that, you can start to lean on them a little bit too, because obviously there's a lot of advantage for me with what Lee's doing, but at the same time, there's a lot of advantage for Lee to be doing with what I'm doing, because we have just so much synergy. And, and so I've gone down and same thing, right? I stayed with Lee for, a couple of days, almost a week there a little while back. And then came back down for the conference, and then spent 2 or 3 days with him after the conference was over, back at Sky Diamonds U, and just, really, really connected with them guys, man. And I think that, people like that at that level, they have to tread lightly with the people they bring into their lives, because there's a lot of people out there just want something from people. Right. And when you can, like, I brought Lee up here, we had an event together and did some things. Right. And, I didn't try to push on him like the things I knew about mergers and acquisitions. Like, I knew that he wanted to do that. And I just continued to like, dude, just come up here, man. We can talk about it then. And when he got up here, I had set up a meeting for him and my, mentor who's doing that. My mentor's company is about an $80 to $100 million manufacturer company, consultant, a few other things. And so I got Lee and him in the same room together. And it was a 2-hour conversation about all of these things. And, when Lee was leaving, he's like, man, I'm sorry I didn't get out in the field with your guys and this and that. I'm like, I didn't bring you here to
for
use.
that.
You know what I mean? Like, bro, I brought, like, I wanted you to come here because I thought that maybe this is an opportunity for me to add some value to you, right? I appreciate you, everything that you've done for me. You put me on. I mean, at the event was constantly putting me on, right? I mean, the whole event, it was like Michael McGovern this and the Clemens Roofing team, and like just really, really, you know, gave me a good spotlight, and you know, and I'm forever grateful for that. And so, you know, any way that I can, you know, not just take it but add value back to people, that's I think he sees that.
Absolutely. And a guy like Lee, I mean, you just hit the nail on the head. If he sees it in you and sees that you're willing to do the work and you're willing to just be there and be consistent, I mean, that's that. I ended up in his office for 97 days because of that, you know, and it's one of those things that just the last 2 years of Blue Collar American Dream, Lee gave me tickets to go because, you know, he said, dude, I know you're going to show up. I know you're going to be sitting in the front. I know you're going to try to learn. And it's crazy because 2 years ago when I went, I met Bradley, and he's the reason why I have this podcast now. So I told myself next time I get to see Bradley, I'm going to tell him about how he, you know, provoked me to do the podcast, which I was able to do because of Lee giving me the opportunity. I was going to do a podcast in Lee's studio, which I did. Not only that, but I did one myself, and I did the telethon with the guy, you know, like a 6-hour live broadcast was cool as could be. Never saw that coming. But the reality is when I talked to Lee, he says, dude, you know, you get these opportunities because you take them and you're willing to put in the work and you're willing to jump on a plane and show up. And I think that's where you and I are very similar. And I can guarantee that you're going to get along fine with Lee. You're not going to be one of the, you know, oh my gosh, this guy, he was too hard on me, or I expected more. The reality is I tell people Lee Haight will call you a baby back bitch right to your face. He'll tell you you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And there's two ways of reacting. You can either get really offended, or you can say, dude, this guy cares because he's got so many people that he could be helping and he's choosing to help me. And, you know, putting in that work is going to be huge, and it's going to lead to great opportunities for you.
And, you know, and that's where, you know, I think that we've been able to connect the way that we have because, you know, I'm, you know, it's funny because the first year I went to the event, right, I'm like, man, I want to speak at this thing, you know, and it's just the manifestation of things, man. You know what I mean? And I think that there's just so much alignment in that. And then, you know, even this year, him and I talking about, you know, potentially doing, you know, maybe a little side offer that's like him and I together on some things, and my blue collar background, his kind of style too. And, you know, maybe doing something along that lines of, you know, outside of a Sky Diamonds, but like business development and sales and, you know, things like that. And so I think that, you know, like you said, man, I mean, look at you, right? You said your podcast is what, 130 episodes?
Yeah.
Good. Incredible. Right. So many people get like, you're doing it because it's something that you enjoy to do. It's something that, you know, you're providing value to people. And so often people just, there's so much entitlement, right? And it's crazy. People think that, you know, their first 90 days in something that they should be successful. And it's like, dude, I didn't, you know, my business might only be a few years old now, but the shit that I'm doing now is the same shit that I've been doing for 10 years. You know what I mean? And they don't see that. They want to come out. I'm like, you didn't see the oodles and noodles dinners and sleeping in my truck and, you know, negative bank accounts, right? And it's like all of those things just callous you. And I think when you start to finally, you know, you be able to vibrate higher and you grow and you're just expanding yourself, and just you naturally start to get around those people, right? Like every single person I have a conversation with nowadays is usually at a high level now, because that's just where I'm running at, right? And so I think when you can be at that level and get around a guy like Lee who is around those types of people, like there's a lot of value to both people, not just in monetary, but relational.
Yeah. And I love what you said about trying to also bring value to that relationship because, you know, we're regular guys. What can we contribute to help a guy like Lee who's willing to take the time to help us? It's our network. It's the people that we know that we can maybe put in proximity to him and, you know, maybe create some kind of a magical deal out of that. And the fact is most people don't look like that. Most people are just trying to take. And I think those that give, they're the ones that end up getting the most in the long run. So it's a great mindset.
Well, I was saying something the other day. It's like so often, you know, people look to connect to convert, right? Like, are you able to connect without a expectation of something from it, right? Like you're not always going to get reciprocity from the person that you're giving it to. or getting it from. And I think that's been one of the biggest things is just going into relationships that it's like, dude, I'm not here to see what I can get from it. I'm not here. Like, I'm not looking to connect to get a sale out of you. Like, I know that if I give my time, my energy to you, right. And same thing this morning, right? Like, we connect, we spend some time with each other, we work with each other. We might never do business together, but because we were both selfless enough to have conversation and create a relationship, there will be something that stems from it no matter what.
Absolutely. You're going to get a roof in Columbus, Ohio from me at some point in this lifetime. I promise you that. I have a couple friends there. So I think it's really amazing, you know, like you say, just being able to develop these relationships can take you to new heights in life, take you to places. Last year, you're at the Blue Collar American Dream Conference, and you and I have a very, very common thing right here. I was at the Blue Collar American Dream Conference last year as well. And the people that I was there with were very good friends of mine. And I told them, I am going to speak on stage at this event next year. And here we go, right? Lee gets me down there. I get the opportunity. The day before the conference, he takes me back there. And John Huffman, who was the MC, we were just kind of walking around looking at everything. And Lee's like, all right, Chuck, you're going to get to introduce, you know, Eric Obrempt. You're going to get to introduce Todd Price. You're going to get to do, you know, Forrest Griffin. And I'm like, bro, Forrest Griffin? Like, I thought I was going to get to speak for a couple minutes and tell my story, but I get to get up there and like hype the crowd. Yeah. And, you know, it happens. So tell me a little bit about that. Okay. As a young guy that's gone through a bunch of stuff, a bunch of hits, you've taken your shots, you're always moving upward. You wanted to speak at this event. Was this like the first of that magnitude where you were able to get up in front of a crowd, tell your story? And tell me a little bit about it, man, because to me, it was weird. I did not get nervous at all like I thought I would, but I don't remember any of it either. It's like you're just there and you're doing it. And in the moment, you're performing at your highest level. And then it's like, dude, what just happened? I have no idea. What was your experience like getting up there and talking in front of that crowd? And, you know, how did that feel?
Yeah, man. I mean, it was, I was super nervous, right? I mean, the speaking thing has been something that, you know, I've always wanted to do, right? I've always kind of seen that in me, right? Like I love just connecting with people, building people, you know, growing people, and it's just been something that's been extremely, I don't know. It's like I've been able to just continuously gravitate my way towards it, right? Like we talked about, man. When you want something and you speak it in the universe and you tell people about it, it just, you know, a lot of times I always say that, you know, the thing that you want is probably going to come, but it's probably going to be, you know, wrapped in some type of sacrifice. Right. Like, are you willing to actually sacrifice the things that you say you want to sacrifice to get the things that you want to get? And, you know, with that opportunity, it was I didn't take it lightly. You know, when Lee had asked me about it, I immediately connected with a speaker friend of mine, and I was practicing my speech and, you know, just really dialing it in. Like, I wanted to go there and blow their socks off. Right. And, you know, I mean, it was kind of an emotional thing for me as well, because I had put so much time and energy into, you know, into the opportunity to speak. And literally, man, like 2 days before I had before the event, my father had come up to Columbus, Ohio, and him and I have had a rocky relationship. And he had come up, and I hadn't seen him in probably a year, hadn't come up to see me or nothing like that. And, you know, the toxicity of the relationship that him and I have, you know, it was great, and while he was here until it wasn't, right? And it started to kind of, now we're screaming at each other, and it's just all the shit that I've been able to get myself away from was just like hit me right in the face. And he left that night, and I hadn't spoke to him, you know, since then. And this was before the event, so even to now. And, you know, it was like I had this whole speech in my head and everything I'd mapped out. And then this happened, and it was like everything just changed, right? It was like I felt that I wasn't worthy of doing it now, right? All those things that just immediately stooped me down to the level that I had kind of gotten myself out of, right? Like it was just such a low vibration and conversation that it fucked me up, bro. And, you know, and I was like literally telling myself, like, dude, I don't even want to go on this trip. I shouldn't even be speaking now. You know, just all the thoughts. And so, you know, I look at that because, you know, I had the opportunity. I'm excited. Everything's going great. And then it's like, what are you going to do now? right? I was faced with some adversity I never saw coming. And, I get down there and I had actually ended up changing my speech up completely and just like freewheeling it because I wanted to say something about the relationship and the things that happened between him and I. And I didn't want to get into all that in front of people for him. And it was just like, oh, this mix of emotions, man. And, and so I say all that because it's like, it was just a wild chain of events to how I kind of, when I got up on that stage, right. And just I got to the event and then I got to sit at sit in the VIP and the conversations I'm having with Nick and Dave Meltzer and all of these things, right. And it was just like, in those moments was when it kind of just shifted me as like, you're supposed to be here, right? You are supposed to be here. Don't let anyone tell you you're not. Don't let anyone change the way that you think about yourself, because at the end of the day, you have to have such a delusional belief in how great you are to get there, that there's going to be, these things are going to happen. Right. And so before I got up on stage, man, I'm sweating, I'm super nervous, but it was just kind of in this moment of like clarity too, of just like, no, man, like, what are you stressed about? Like, what is there to be scared about? You know what I mean? It's like most people probably won't even remember what you say. Right. And on top of that, it's like, dude, you're getting the opportunity that you asked for. And what's the worst case that can happen? You go out there and you fall on your face and nothing comes of it. What's the best thing that can happen? You go out, you have a great experience. And I was able to walk away from there and be like, man, like, I didn't do as good as I wanted to do, but it was my first time ever doing it. And now it's like, now I kind of got that taste of it. Right. And I was able to, again, have that moment to overcome the adversity of other things going on in my life, that it's like, I was able to shut that out, go up there, dial in. And I think that's been the biggest thing for me so many times in life, is like, there's a lot of noise constantly, a lot of things going on. And it's like, to be able to find peace in the chaos. Right. And when you can, it's like Jesus, when he gets in the boat, right? And it's shit like, how you sleeping, man? And he's like, he's able to find that peace. And when you can lock into the peace and the chaos, I think that like, that's when the opportunities are really going to shine for you. And, I felt that I could have done better, but I was grateful to have the opportunity, and the conversations I had with people, in backstage and things like that. It was just like, man, it was a very surreal moment.
It was. And I was backstage for the event and I got to see all that stuff. And I could definitely, now that we talk about it after the fact, man, I in my mind, I did not come over and say anything to you. I think I came over and was like, hey man, if you need a water or anything, let me know.
Yeah.
Because I could tell, right? Like, you were nervous, dude. You were definitely nervous back there. And it takes a real man to admit that, because I just came on here and said I wasn't nervous, which everyone knows is bullshit. I was nervous just as much as anybody, but you got up there, and I want to share something with you based on what you just told me. Hopefully this is something that can, put a smile on your face for the day. I'm working with Lee over there at Sky Diamonds. And when I was there for the 97 days, one of the things I was doing was actually making phone calls, promoting the conference, selling tickets. And I was able to bring a bunch of people that probably wouldn't have come otherwise. But one of my good friends is a young man over in Kaufman, Texas. His name is Reese Lawson, and his family business is Tiger Roofing. I've known this kid since he was a little boy, and I've seen him grow up in the industry, and he's a super guy. I called him up and said, hey, Reese, the speakers are going to be amazing. You're going to love this, dude. I think you should come down. And we're talking. And he's like, you know who I want to see at this event the very most? And I was like, who? And he's like, Michael McGovern, the reckless CEO guy. And I was like, really? That is pretty cool, because,
Wow.
that's I was expecting like Brad Lee or Dave Meltzer or something, but you were the guy. And I think a lot of these younger guys in the industry are looking up to you. They're seeing what you're doing, and you've got a little bit of a following going on with a lot of these guys in our business that maybe you're not fully aware of. But there was a kid that came to our conference 100% just because he wanted to meet you. And I don't know if you remember this or not, but I actually did get that meeting to happen at some point during one of those breakout deals. And that was kind of a cool little side note there that since I've got you here on the podcast, I'll tell you that story.
No, it gave me chills, man. And it's like I said, like, even being on here today, dude, I'm just so, dude, I'm so grateful, and I really am. And it's, I couldn't feel like more in alignment with just everything in my life. You know what I mean, man? I truly felt that I have come from, humble beginnings, and, obviously didn't, not telling all the story, but there's a lot of things that, man, I had to get through to get to where I'm at today. And, in the hard things that I went through, I felt like have just sculpted everything, right? Sculpted me to be able to be who I am today and connect with the people. And, I at one point in my life, I had growth hormone deficiency, right? So I was a under, like, basically they told me I wasn't going to grow. They're like, you're going to be a midget pretty much, bro, at 4'8". And I got on growth hormone and all of those things. But dude, there was probably 6 years or so that I was picked on constantly. Like, I remember being in high school and getting chairs ripped out from underneath me and shit, and just being the laughing stock of things because of just the deficiencies that I had. And it was in those moments that it's like I'll never forget that. And now being able to be where I'm at, because I also got to be the biggest guy of everybody too at one point, right? And I never let either one ever change my ego or the belief that I had in myself and others. And I feel like that's a lot of why I've been able to have the success that I have, is like I just truly try to show up as my authentic self all the time, man. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing that you would ask me that I would not tell be an open book on and share about. And just there's a lot of, I think with Columbus Roofing, what we just built an awesome culture, right? I mean, if you people follow us on social, they see they see the guys, everyone's posting, everyone's doing the things. Like there's a lot of like conversations with Lee was like, dude, I wish my guys would do the shit that your guys are doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they do that because it's just like, I always just try to be that example for them. And I'm always feeding time and energy to these guys. And anyone out there that has companies, like so often we get so focused on the top line and the bottom line and the revenue and the sales and all these things. And what I've learned to understand is that the people are the ones that are going to build the business, right? And even with the event, I took 8 of my people down, bought all their plane tickets, bought the Airbnb for everyone to stay in, bought the cars for us to drive around. And there's a lot of times where I could have put money in my pocket from the business that I'd rather invest it into an employee or invest it into somebody to, know what what could come from that. And every time, man, it's always worked out for me. And I think that when you can do that and you just try to, show up, because people need like authenticity these days, man. There's so much just chaos and fake in the world that it's like, dude, when you can just show up and truly be you and inspire people by what you're best at, like you said, a guy like that I had no idea is even paying attention, right, says that. And it's like, man, it's those moments where you're like, dang, we really are doing what we want to do.
Yeah, it's such a blessing, and I think that's the perfect word to use for everything that somehow has come our way. I look at my life story and it amazes me. It's like, dude, I'm a guy from Hilliard, Ohio. I don't know how all this stuff happened. I'm hanging out with Lee Haight. I got this podcast and all. You're definitely doing something good. You've understood the fact that you've got something here, right? You've got your show, your podcast, you're putting yourself out there, especially in Columbus, you're getting yourself known. Tell me a little bit about your podcast. Like, what was the idea behind it? What led you to starting that? Was it something that had to do with business, or were you just kind of looking to do something for fun? And
dude, it's actually a frustrating time right now at the podcast. I had a partner in the media company, kinda, and him and I have kinda somewhat dispersed. So I haven't had a podcast in like a month now because of I'm getting a new studio. We're in the process of doing all this. And, and for me, the podcast has always been something that I love. Right. And it was really funny the way that him and I kind of connected was my pastor had connected with me, this guy. And, and I started having conversations with him. The guy had a studio and he's like, man, have you ever thought about starting a podcast? And I was like, I got this concept of this like reckless CEO idea. He's like, dude, that's an awesome name. And I'm like, yeah. And I look at it of, Ed Milet talks about we're best, suited to serve the people that we used to be. Right. And so for me, that was that reckless CEO. I just kind of kept figuring it out. What it was like, always, it was just like, it kept coming together and I had no idea how, right? I'm like reckless and abandoned, but I'm willing to try and take the risk. And it works out for you, And so that's kind of what stemmed the reckless CEO, was that I think that was my voice to be able to speak to those out there that, might be feeling that same thing and kind of going through it. And so in that moment, he was like, man, like, I think we should start the podcast. And so that was kind of it. But dude, I'll tell you, it took me so long to like, it was probably a month or 2 months before I felt comfortable to just like go in there and speak. Right. I was like jotting all these things down and constantly going in and stopping it and restarting it, stopping it and restarting it. And eventually just got to the point, like my speaking got better. I practiced it. The reps got in and I just started to, build it and grow it, man. And, that is definitely the thing that if I can get to the point in life where I can speak, run the podcasts, coach people. Like that's the apex for me, right? Like that's really what all this, the roofing company, all of these things is the credibility and the experience to learn. But like, that's where I feel my best. That's what I love to do. Having these conversations, learning people, being able to coach people, say something that might help somebody. And so, that was just that thing of it just was the calling, right? It's like everything I ever said I wanted, man, I've just continued to have it happen, right? I just met somebody. Oh, we're going to start the podcast now. So we get that going. And it's my opportunity to leverage the relationships that I have, right? It's like there's so many people that have so much wisdom that they don't have a platform to share necessarily every time, right? And so that was my big thing of being able to bring the guests in and talk to them and have them share themselves and share their stories. And I just think that it's just it's a great way to connect with people, right? Like look at you and I here today, right? Like what a blessing that is, just to be able to meet thousands of miles away from each other, but to be able to connect and have conversation and constantly put yourself around the people that think the same. And so for me, I'm again a little down in the dumps that it is a little slow right now to get it turned back around. But I've been looking at a few different studios and stuff, so I'd say I'll be recording again by mid next month. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I love it. Mine took a 3-month hiatus when I went to Florida. I literally just jumped on a plane and I left all my podcast studio here. So it was like, I had enough to where it went for 2 months without me doing any new recordings. But once I ran out, it was like, oh no, I'm going to lose my momentum. And I've been doing this every single week consistently for 2.5 years, and it was like, I can't lose this. This is going to be big. One day this podcast is going to be, it's going to be my main source of revenue one day. I'm putting that out to the world. The roofing company is great. Like you said, it's awesome. It builds our street cred, but I'm like you. I love helping people. I've got an appointment this coming week. I'm going to be in Oklahoma City, helping a team with door knocking, helping a sales team. I get to go around the country and work with different roofing contractors. I get to be buddies with guys like Lee Haight, and it's an amazing world, right? This podcast has opened so many different doors. I use it for tools. I use it for training, like I'll share this podcast and someone will come a year later and say, man, I watched the one that Michael McGovern was on and his story was so similar to mine. And thank you. It impacted me. Yeah, and you're going to get that for years and years to come. So be ready, my friend. You've opened the floodgates.
And that's the next big thing for me, man. I've got a course myself that I've kind of been working on. We're doing some stuff. Probably gonna publish a small book as well. And so that's been the big focus right now, is getting the team dialed in on that, getting everything created, getting it put together. It's going to be called From Reckless to Riches, right? So it's kind of the reckless concept, right? To rags to riches, but essentially just flipped a little bit. And so, and it's funny, I was out in Florida when I actually came up with that name. I was with Lee. And, him and I were talking and he's like, here's your ideal client, man. Here's what you got to do. And I've had this course recorded for, man, probably 6-7 months. And I just hadn't put it out. Nothing. I just couldn't figure out what was that offer? What's that thing that just stuck that I was like, that's what it is, right? I was like, a Reckless CEO workshop and a master, all of these things. And then finally I was literally swimming down in Naples in the beach, just laying there. And it was like, boom, Reckless to Riches, man. That's what it is. And so I'm super excited to get that out.
Absolutely. You're going to help a lot of people improve themselves, in all aspects of life. And that's what this is really all about to me. We're getting down to, we're at the 48 minutes. I try to keep them around an hour. So I got another 3 hours worth of shit to pack into the next 10 minutes here.
We got to do it again too. So once I get mine going, we can definitely make sure we do
absolutely. We can make this a regular occurrence. I love doing these things. It's so much fun. Let's talk a little bit about your team. You said, okay, you start off, you've got a very small business. It explodes quickly. To go do 7 million in a year, I understand the type of staff that you need. I understand the type of sales reps. I also understand that you've got to have a pretty good, like you said, a well-oiled machine. You've got to have that culture. Tell me a little bit about this, because I'm looking at your guys right here. You're all standing on the 50-yard line at the shoe, which I'm jealous.
Yeah.
But I see a pretty good resemblance to all your guys. Y'all look like you've got some common traits. You look like you don't miss leg day very often. Y'all like to work out, and, younger guys that kind of fit the same description that you do. Where do you go to find these types of recruits that you bring into your company? obviously you're not just putting an Indeed ad out and getting all these guys that kind of fit the same description. So how's that work for you? Where do you go to find your guys, and how do you get them invested into your team?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chuck. One of the last year, right? We're exploding. I'm figuring I had no idea what the hell I'm doing, but it's working, right? Things are happening. And I had actually had somebody that had right at the end of the season, man. It was probably, we'll say like August, September. We had just had our best month in August. So it was like September. And a local roofing company tried to poach my entire team. Right. And basically came in and offered them all the, like, there was one guy that worked for me that, took care of the guy, helped the guy out, how that goes. Right. And,
Yep.
loyalty looks different to a lot of people. And, and so, that happened. Then all of a sudden, it's kind of like blew the whole team up. Right. We had this incredible year. I'm like, dude, we got momentum. It's going to keep killing this thing. And before you know it, man, like once that happened, he had like infiltrated, right? He like came in and talked to these people and told them this and told them that, and just, really turned everybody against me. And, I was able to like save it. Only that one guy went, but like once that happened, it just broke the business. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it changes everything.
It changes everything, man. And, so once that happened, then I'm kind of like going through that and learning it, man. Then I find out that the operations guy that I had, that was kind of the first guy that I had brought in, hadn't paid for things. And all of a sudden, like that happens. And then I get an email on, September 31st. And it was like, hey, these are all the things that are due on October 1st. It was like $90,000 in bills and, distributor payments and all these things that hadn't been paid that I thought got paid, because we're growing so fast, man. I don't know. I'm trusting people, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And like next thing you know, it just I all of this happened. I couldn't pay nothing. I like had to lock bank accounts up. I'm trying to go and sell things. I realized that we've got $250,000 in collections that hasn't been picked up. And like, dude, it was the disaster, man. And I ended up going into off season about $250,000 in debt to Beacon and ABC. And I had about $20,000 in the bank account at this time, like just bled myself out. You know what I mean? I bought the Airbnb in Worcester to help, like everything that made it look like we were making money wasn't, you know what I mean? It was, I learned a lot of difference between cash flow and money, and so, man, I say all that because it really prefaced me coming into this next season, right? It was like, dude, I had two people that stayed with me. I got rid of that operations guy. I had a lady, her name's Misty. She runs all of our operations. She's the freaking, if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't even be where we're at. She's just one of the most incredible people I've ever met. She's got an abundant amount of loyalty to me. And it's just, I'm super blessed for her. And, and so, her and I like sat down, and the one other guy that stayed with us. And it was like, all right, we gotta figure this thing out. Right. And we're just calling everybody, getting the collections, doing this, doing that, running here, running there, just like, and I was able to like come into this season and started to get momentum. Right. I found another guy that had come to a hiring event. And then same thing, man, I just started to really lock in on like, what was a thing that I was good at. Right. And I looked at this of like a football team. Right. And I'm like, man, I gotta, what do I think that's helped me be where I'm at? Right. And it was that authenticity. It's finding ex-athletes. Right. It's finding the good old boys, right? These guys that are used to working, 12, 16-hour days in construction and project management that they just need to see an opportunity of something else outside of that. Right. Because that's a lot of it, man. It's like there's a lot of these, you get to these cities with these kids and they're entitled and they think they deserve things. And they get into these sales jobs and they think they got to be making $150,000 a year out the gate. And they see all this money coming in. They're jealous of the things that they don't even know what business is about. Right. And so like, it was really me like restructuring the people that I was looking for. Right. It's like, that was a big piece of it. And then it was constantly just putting myself out there and just making sure that like my social media amplified everything that we were doing. Right. And so it's like getting the trucks wrapped and just hanging around the right people and really turning Columbus Roofing into this like vocational. Right. Because I was like, yeah, we're a roofing company, but my goal was to teach these guys financial literacy because I never had that. Right. And it's like, I have my real estate background. So I also have a fund that I've built that our guys can invest in. And now we go buy real estate with that fund. And so like, my goal was being able to create this ecosystem. And so I just got really good at selling the vision. right? And then making sure I put the pieces in order to keep that vision, to create that vision, and then constantly feeding into these guys, having one-on-one meetings with them. Where do you want to be? Where do you want to go? Like trying to be that dream manager for them of like, I want to help you accomplish your goals, right? Like I don't want this to be the Mike show, right? I want to leverage my platform and my opportunity to help to build this, but to help to give you guys opportunities too. And so that's what I think a lot has really helped us, man, is that, you know, we're not like your standard roofing company, right? Everyone knows how important mentorship is. Everyone knows how important the self-development is. And I'm paying to put my people to courses. And I'm, you know, every Friday I do a mentor call. So everything that I'm paying thousands of dollars from coaches from, you know, on Fridays, I come in and I lead a mentor call for everybody in the company, right? You can get on, you can not get on. And I'm just coaching people. I'm hey, what can I help you with? Here's the things that I'm going through, right? Practicing my speeches, doing the things that, you know, I know is going to not only help the people, but it helps me too. And so I think, and then encouraging my people to step up. I run internal challenges all the time. Who can post two stories a day for the next 7 days? And I'll take you to dinner, whoever does it. I'll take you to Hyde Park and, you know, give you some money or do it. Right. And it's like, dude, we got 6 trucks that are wrapped in Columbus Roofing Company wraps, and only one's my truck. They're all their own trucks that they've wrapped with the company logo on them.
That's the concept right there, my man. You've got it figured out. And I absolutely love that. That is, that's good shit. That's all I can say, dude. You've got it figured out. I appreciate it. Everything's been so good. This has been like probably the best hour I've had in quite a while, and I've really enjoyed it. And we have a lot of parallels as human beings and in our career paths and all that stuff. I always like to end with the one question, the $1 million question. All right. Doing this roofing stuff, I've been in it 25 years. Like I said, I used to load roofs, but for P&W, I drove a conveyor truck for 12 years. I went to Charlotte and I opened a branch of that company from scratch with zero experience and zero knowledge. So I've got a lot of good, fun things that have happened in my life. And we always focus on the positives, but I've been in roofing for a while, right? And I understand not every homeowner is going to be the most pleasant experience. Not every experience is going to be pleasant just based on different variables. So whenever I've got someone that's a specific, you know, to a roofing trade like I am, I always like to ask, because everybody's got one. Tell me about your most screwed up experience so far. The one that you wish you had never met, the house you wish you'd never seen, the homeowner that you wish had never been born. We've all got one. I told Lee mine on his podcast, and it was a life-changing story that I shared there. Now everywhere I go, people ask me about the 14-year-old naked boy that was standing right here as I signed a deal with his mom. But we've all got one. What's yours? What's your most messed up roofing story at this point in your career? Knock yourself out, man, because you probably want to with the memory, right?
Yeah, no, that's good, man. That's good. You know, I'd say you know, we had a client this year, you know, that it was just, you know, everything went wrong. You know how it is, right? It's like one thing goes wrong, everything goes wrong. You know, our guys drove nails down through the soffit, and it was just everything went bad. And, you know, I go out there, I try to solve the problem with the guy, you know, I was able to kind of save it. And then then it kind of went off the trails again, and we went back, and the guys they were going to sue the company and get into all of this stuff. And, you know, I can't say that that it was necessarily a moment where I'm just like, man, like absolutely terrible. But at the same time, it was one of those moments where, you know, you reaffirm with your people of who you work with. Right. I think that's one of my biggest things is I don't know that it's hard for me to think of one, because I'm just like, I don't know, man, I've been super blessed. Right. Maybe I haven't been in the bit industry long enough to have.
You haven't met him yet. Okay. Well,
happened yet. Right. But I could just think of the ones that have, and it's like, you know, it's come down to, like, I tell everybody in construction, you know, we're like, if 50 things are going wrong, we're doing all right, you know, and I try to really stick to that, even when things go wrong, even when things are messed up. You know, it's how do you respond? How do you respond when things get messed up? Right? Because you're going to have mistakes, things are going to happen, but how do you show up when most people quit? Right. And I think that's one of the biggest niches in this industry that I have really been able to focus on is, dude, consistency, reliable, being confident with the homeowners, right? Even when things are going off the rails, Do you show up and try to fix the problem, or do you show up and push the problem onto somebody else? Right. And so this homeowner here, there was an issue constantly. He was going to sue us. I went out there. I solved it. Then my rep didn't fix the problem. They drilled on our fascia boards. There was like a quarter-inch nails into it. It was terrible. Right. And, at that point, I literally went back out and I cut the dude a check for the entire amount of the roof. And it was about it. And again, smaller roof, right? When you get into these smaller ones that you think are going to be the easy ones, they're always the hardest ones, right? And
yep.
I had to go back and I cut the check for 10 grand to the homeowner and said, dude, I'm sorry, man. Right? It is what it is. But unfortunately, it's those instances where I think that even though it goes wrong, if you have the right intentions, it always turns out all right. But I'll be thinking about a better story for you. So I feel like that wasn't the greatest, but I've had one to hit me yet.
Hey, that's pretty good. Anybody that's willing to go back and give someone 10 grand because they made a mistake and they're man enough to admit that, that's a pretty damn good story right there. So I definitely appreciate it. I respect it 100%. We're here at the hour, Mike. It's been a hell of a conversation. I've enjoyed this. I still got 5 things on the bullet points that we haven't even touched. So definitely another episode in the making. For the people that are watching today that have enjoyed this, where can they find you if they want to follow on social media? Any of my friends over in Columbus, you guys, like, I've given referrals to other roofing contractors in the past because there were people that I worked with when I was in distribution. I don't know if those guys are any good anymore. So now I've got someone that I can actually say, modern day times, this is my referral in Columbus. How do the people get a hold of you, Mike?
Yeah, so obviously all social media handles is at the Reckless CEO, website recklessceo.com. Like I said, I think the big thing is stay tuned for the course going to be coming out, Reckless to Riches. We got the book in publishing as well, so that's going to be huge. Man, and I try to respond. I try to talk to anybody that I can. Right, if someone reaches out, I never hesitate to reconnect or figure out a way that I can add value if they're asking. So just reach out. What I mean? If you have questions, hit me up. Instagram is probably the best way to get a hold of me. So get on there, and just DM me. And man, and Chuck, I appreciate you, bro. I appreciate you having me on here. I appreciate your kind words as well. And just give me the opportunity to even come in and be a part of the show, brother. And, outside of this, man, don't ever hesitate. If there's something that I can do to add value back to you and help you out in any way. And I know you talked about traveling and doing some consulting stuff. So maybe we can get you up here to Columbus and have you come meet the team and get you into the studio and we can do something together sometime.
I need to. I haven't been to Columbus in 3 years, and it's my home, dude. So I'm a Buckeye for sure. I love everything about that place. And I'm definitely going to make that happen. So thank you, Mike, for your time. Thank you, everybody, for watching, for supporting Keeping It Rio. Remember, do the subscription thing, like, share, all those thumbs up type stuff. I appreciate that. And until next time, I always end with my cheesy ass tagline: keep on keeping